Hi, this is Junaid, neurocritical care stroke and epilepsy specialist. In this particular module, we're going to discuss lifestyle consideration to really understand how life is impacted by your profession, career. And I've told before that medicine is a way of life and not just a profession. So you have to have a vision of whole life rather than just considering a small bit of professional information. So this is where we're going to discuss how to have this mindset of the whole life as compared to just thinking of a subspecialty, because this is again a career that's going to last 35 years and it's a multi-million-dollar career, at least in UK, US, etc. So you have to make sure that you are choosing it correctly and what impact will it have on your life. So first and foremost, research has shown that everyone has three priorities. These are medical student surveys, and this is the top three priorities that medical students said that they have when they are choosing a medical specialty. The first and foremost is job satisfaction. Clearly, if you're going to have a job that is going to last this long, you need to make sure that you are satisfied with that job. The second thing is clearly the lifestyle impact, which is this lecture is about, that how it is going to impact your lifestyle, especially after training. I mean, to be honest, in training, the lifestyle sucks. And the last is impact on patients. So you really feel empowered that you have done something at the end of the day. And there's unfortunately a prejudice. Medical students, even in their first month of training, have already decided what they're going to go into while having limited exposure. So career counselors need to keep this in mind when they're actually helping other medical students to choose their subspecialty. There is clearly priorities, and there is also a prejudice. People do change their minds, and that's why I want you to be open about making sure that you're making the right choice. Again, throughout this course, I'll be making sure that you understand both how it impacts your life and what is the future of healthcare. First and foremost is defining these three things. The most important thing is personality. Who you are. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you someone who is actually enjoy research? Are you someone who enjoys innovation? Are you someone who enjoys making sure that the patients are having the best education? So these are things that you're going to have to make sure that you understand about yourself. And the best way to do it is ask one question. That question is to your best friend. Why are you friends with me? Believe it or not, they're not going to be able to answer it, but hone them down. Pin them down and ask them, like, what is truly that you are my best friend for? That will give you a clearest picture of who you are, believe it or not, because he's going to be able to say 2 or 3 attributes about yourself, and that really is an objective way to understand who you are. And believe me, that's more important than having an internal picture of yourself, and you'll be surprised by the answers. Who you are, what personality you have is extremely important. Gather information from your friends and family from an objective manner and not just rely on an internal picture of yourself, because that could be diluted. Number 2, what passion, what drives you is extremely important too. Here's a huge difference between purpose and passion. So let's just discuss purpose first. Purpose is something that is going to be with you for the whole life, something that is going to be in the thick and thins of things. If for some reason the life is getting harder, if you have the purpose that is driving you, is going to make sure that you continue in that regard. Passion is something that you move that purpose into that particular direction. So purpose is basically your ocean, and passion is the river that feeds into that ocean. Let me give you an example. So my purpose is, if you save a life, it is as if you saved the life of all mankind. So clearly that is my purpose in life. I want to make sure that I'm doing something productive in my life. But what is my passion? My passion is neurology. I wanted to do my purpose through neurology. So that is where my passion is. So clearly you have to understand both of these differences in terms of, what is your purpose and passion in your life. Your purpose could be anything, including making money. It doesn't matter. Whatever your purpose is, it is important that you identify it. You make sure you write it down, and then the pathway to achieve it. What really drives you every day in the morning that you wake up and say, you know what? I really love it that, I can save stroke patients, I can give TPA to people and can change their lives, I can make them recommendations that will help them eventually improve their lives, etc., etc. So passion is different, purpose is different. And there could be more than one passion and more than one purpose. So again, for example, I have a personality that makes sure that I'm a constant learner, and therefore I love innovation, and therefore my purpose is to make sure that digital innovation, including digital healthcare, helps people. So that's another purpose. How do I do it? Making these educational videos, that's number 1. So that's why I have a passion to do it. And number 2, I'm part of a digital health company, VMed, which is a virtual care company. So therefore, There could be more than one option to go forward with what your purpose is. And this is going to be simply your personal statement. Think about it. If what you're going to write eventually on your personal statement is this: personality, purpose, passion. Who, why, what. And this is another tweet that I saw, and I thought it would be best to include it. Like, what is really that makes you smarter? What makes you happy? And what is more useful for you, for others? So this is another way to sort of reframe this conversation of finding the right balance, finding your life. When you're deciding on your medical specialty, the first and the foremost thing is to differentiate between these three things. Most people actually just talk about two things: medical versus surgical. And that is not true. Surgical specialty is defined through an operating room anymore, but clearly there's more than just operating room in which you can do procedures. Like, there are more colonoscopies done, there are other different procedures, intubations, central lines, lumbar punctures, and I mean tons of other procedures that are non-invasive or minimally invasive, and the whole field is moving towards it. But the first and foremost is, are you a person who loves the OR or not? So that's number one. So defining between medical and surgical. But this is the most important thing that people forget: being a physician's physician. What does that mean? Most of physicians are going to have direct contact between the physician and the patient, but there's a in-between subspecialty of physicians that do not directly communicate with patients, but they communicate with other physicians. Who are those? Number one is anesthesiologists, right? I mean, there's of course pain anesthesiologists that do take care of patients directly, but at the end of the day, the general conception of anesthesiologists is they're going to communicate more so with their surgeons and help other physicians achieve their goals. Same thing like pathologists and radiologists. So those specialties are more so communicating with other physicians, and the term I like to use is physician's physician. So what kind of physician are you going to be? Are you going to be a medical, surgical, or are you going to be a physician's physician? Keep that in mind, because that's something that people forget about 1/3 category of physicians. The second step is understanding the spectrum of care in itself. Now, care can be divided into multiple acuity levels. One is hyperacute, trauma, stroke, and then critical care, which is emergency, ICU, etc. And then finally, we're talking about chronic care, end of life care, primary care, and palliative care. You have to understand what spectrum of care do you want to stay in, and that is extremely important. Now, you don't have to choose it, and one of the reasons is that you have to understand that spectrum can lie within the subspecialty or specialty of your choice. Let's take neurology, for example. I mean, clearly I'm a neurointensivist, neuro ICU, and I have done more palliative care, believe it or not, in my neuro ICU than some of the palliative care physicians. Same thing, if I was a multiple sclerosis specialist, I would actually end up doing basically primary care for my patients, because multiple sclerosis is such a devastating disease that I have to take care of everything in one go. End of life care, I discussed palliative care. Chronic care, most of my patients that have migraine headaches or other kinds of headaches, epilepsy, etc., end up in my office as chronic patients for years to come. So that's another thing that you have to get. And then there's acute, which is neurocritical care, and hyperacute, which is stroke. So there could be more specialties that are available within that specialty in itself. So when you're designing your passion, that's important, that like neuro is my passion, but then I have to choose a life within that passion, correct? So therefore you have to make sure that you understand the availability of spectrum of care within that subspecialty. There are subspecialties that are heavy, right? For example, you can be a general surgeon and then, just do appendectomies, or you can be, that is more acute or trauma related stuff, or you can be a general surgeon and just do gallbladder surgery. So there are ways that people have designed their life accordingly. So you have to keep that in your mind, that how you're going to design your life and understanding the spectrum of care from the very get-go. Second thing to understand is how training pathways differ. Now, there are different countries, and if you're in a different country than US, then this may not be applicable, but at least in US, the way the pathway is that you actually end up doing an internal medicine residency or a general surgery residency, and then you go into subspecialty surgeries, for example, hematology, oncology, etc. But there are alternative pathways in certain situations: orthopedic surgery, ENT, neurosurgery. Same thing with medicine fields, psychiatry, neurology, etc. And then they actually do one first year of general surgery, transition year internal medicine, but then they directly go into the field of their subspecialty. And then there's another layer, which is fellowship and subspecialty, etc. You have to have a complete outlook of what your career is going to look like, because that is is extremely important to design it. It's very hard to do neurosurgery for 8 years and then do another year of spine surgery. But if you have some clarity, if you have an idea what you're trying to get into and understanding the pathway, it is extremely important that you do so. And therefore, when you are actually choosing your subspecialty, you talk about these questions to the mentors that you have, to the examples you have in your life. So it's very important to have a long view of what your training outlook is going to look like as well. Implications, I mean, to be honest with you, it is a long pathway, and you have to make sure that you're financially supported. You have to make sure that you are actually able to continue on that pathway for a long time, health reasons, etc. So having this long view is extremely important in making sure what subspecialty you're going to choose. And this is really boils down to, again, the life, because believe it or not, I've seen a lot of people fail and succeed because of multiple reasons. I mean, I've seen life-altering events that have changed people, and unfortunately, you cannot plan for it, but at least you have an idea. And that's very important to take into consideration, your current state and your future state. It's extremely important. I've seen couples who are extremely successful because they have supported each other, lived apart even, and there are couples who have just living together have grown apart. So clearly family is one of those things that it's extremely important that you make sure that your partner is on board with your choices as well, because if they're not, then it becomes harder. And as I said, there are ways that you can actually change your career trajectory with the acuity of care, with the passion and purpose, and there are ways that you can actually provide that same purpose and passion in a different way. So make sure that you take these into considerations. Family, as I said, marriage, kids, weekends and nights, I thought wouldn't be any important, but now my wife becomes completely crazy when I am on weekends calls. So it makes an impact. Extended family, if your parents need help, if your grandparents need help, you have to make sure that you are able to provide them if need be. And of course, your own health and your spouse's health is also extremely important, because that changes as well. So please make sure that you actually have a complete evolution of life in itself.